Um, a woman to whom property fell before she was betrothed, Beit Shammai and Beis Hillel agree that she may sell it or give it away, and the act is valid. If it fell to her after she was betrothed, Beit Shammai says she may sell it. Beis Hillel, however, says she may not sell it. They both agree that if she sold it or gave it away, the act is valid. Rabbi Yehuda, they argued before Rabbi Gamliel, since he gains possession of the woman, should he not gain possession of the property? He replied to them, "You are ashamed of the new property, and you wish to impose upon us the old property. If it fell to her after she was married, both agree that if she sold it or gave it away, the husband takes it away from the buyers. If it fell to her before she was married and she subsequently married, Rabbi Gamliel says if she sold it or gave it away, the act is valid. Rabbi Hanina ben Akiva says they argued before Rabbi Gamliel since he gains possession of the woman, should he not gain possession of the property? He replied to them, "We are ashamed of the new property, and you wish to impose upon us the old property." Reb Shimon distinguishes between one kind of property and another property. Another property that is known to the husband she may not sell. If she sold it or gave it away, the act is invalid. Property unknown to the husband she may not sell, but if she sold it or gave it away, the act is valid. If money fell to her, land should be bought with it, and he enjoys the usufruct thereof. Produce detached from the ground, land should be bought with it, and he enjoys the usufruct thereof. But produce that is attached to the ground, said Medmeher, they appraise them and determine how much they are worth with the produce and how much they are worth without the produce. With the difference, land should be bought, and he enjoys the usufruct thereof. The sages, however, say produce attached to the ground belongs to him. Detached from the ground belongs to her, and land should be bought with it, and he enters the usufruct thereof. And he enjoys that. Okay.
Okay, usufruct. The term is usufruct, which is use of the fruits.
Usufruct. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, and so Rabbi Shimon sums it up nicely now. Rabbi Shimon אומר, מקום שיפה כוחה בכניסה, הורה כוחה ביציאסה. Where there's an exact correlation that wherever his strength is higher when they get married, her strength is higher when they get divorced. Okay. Makom shehura kocha b'knisa sa yafe kocha b'yitziasa and vice versa. Peres hamechuber in the karka. So just looking at produce that is attached to the ground. Okay, that's his when they get married. B'knisa sa shelo u'b'yitziasa shela. And if he divorces her and there's fruit attached to the tree, it goes back with her. Hatlushin min hakarka b'knisa sa shelah u'b'yitziasa shelo. But if it's already been detached, then when they get married, that it still belongs to her, and when if it's been but when they get divorced, then it belongs to him. Okay, so that's just a neat little summary of the halachas we discussed before. Naflula avadim ushvachos zakenim. Now, what happens if they're married and she inherits from her father's estate slaves and slave girls who are old, not really capable of working the way they used to. Yimachru, let them be sold. Yilakach bahin karka v'hu ochel peros, and use the money to buy land for her, and then he gets the usufruct. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Lo timkor, no, you cannot force her to sell. Mipnei shehein shvach beis aviha, because she can say no. These servants are from my father's house, and they show his great stature that he had these slaves. Even though they're old now, they're still respectable, and I want to keep them. Naflula zaysim u'gefanim zakenim. What happens if she inherited old grapevines, old olive trees that are no longer producing? Yimachru la'etzim, let them be sold for firewood. V'yilakach bahem karka, and again buy land. V'hu ochel peros, and then he gets to have the usufruct. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, lo timkor. No, she cannot be forced to sell these. Mipnei shehen shvach beis aviha, because once again these are old property that even though they're not producing now, they still showcase the grandeur of her father's house. Hamotzi hotzaos al nichse ishto. Now, what happens if a husband takes his wife's property and it was a bit of the field had kind of gone to seed, and he decided that he needed to invest some money in making things better, so that it should produce better. Okay, and then after all this time of investing money into the field, they decide to get divorced. Now, uh, Hotzi harbe v'achal kima, and it says the Mishnah, if he invested a lot and only reaped a little bit, so he didn't cover his costs, he just got a very small return from the field, or kima v'achal harbe, or he just invested a little bit and paid back hugely. Ma she'hotzi hotzi, ma she'achal achal, and whatever he spent, whatever he ate, and there's no going back on it. However, hotzi v'lo achal, if he spent all the money on preparing the field and they didn't stay married even until the harvest season, which means that he never did not get back a single agora of produce from what he invested. Now yishava kama hotzi v'yitol. He will take a shavua of how much he invested in the field, because now he's getting divorced and the field's going back to his wife, and he'll say, okay, so I want my expenses back because I made your field better and I never got any benefit. Okay. Shomer Yavam. So this Mishnah actually is identical to a Mishnah that we read before in Yevamos. Um, so this we're going to just go through pretty quickly because it's fresh in our mind from when we learned it in Yevamos, especially because we've been doing chazaras and everything. But let's just go through it. Shomer Yavam, a woman who is waiting for Yibum Shenaflu la Nechasim, her property fell to her. Modim Beis Shammai Beis Hillel Shemocheret V'Nasenes V'Kayam. She has every right to do whatever she wants with her property. Mesa, what happens if she dies while she's waiting for Yibum? Ma yasu b'kesuba sa'u v'nechasim ha'nichnasim v'hayotzin. What happens to her kesuba and with the property that she brought into the marriage, whether it's on barzel or nichse milog? Beis Shammai omrim yachloku yorshe habal im yorshe ha'av. So Beis Shammai say that we split this down the middle between the yorshim of her father and the yorshim of her husband.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ubeis Hillel omrim nechasim b'chezkasan. No, everything stays in its chazaka. Whoever currently owns the property, whoever is the muhzak in the property that she's going out with, gets to keep it. Kesubasa, the kesuba, since the money of the kesuba was always in the husband's hands, he never had to pay it out, be, because she was still waiting for Yibum. So the kesuba doesn't get paid out unless the Yavam does chalitza with her, and that hasn't been done. So the kesuba is still in the chazaka of the husband's side. So the kesuba gets paid, does not get paid out. Okay. Nechasim hanichnasim hayotzim ima. However, her property that comes in and goes out with her, bechezkas yoshehav, then that must go back to her side of the family. Okay.
All right. Okay. Ches
Hey,
Vav. Hey Vav, I'm sorry. If one pronounces a vow on his wife not to have relations, Beit Shammai says 2 weeks. Beis Hillel says 1 week. Students may leave for Torah study without permission for 30 days. Laborers 1 week. The conjugal rights stated in the Torah are as follows: men of leisure every day, laborers twice a week, donkey drivers once a week, camel drivers once in 30 days, sailors once in 6 months. These are the word of Rabbi Eliezer. If a woman rebels against her husband, they decrease her ksuba, eat 7 dinners a week. Rabbi Yehuda says 7 tropaks. Until when does he decrease? Until he decreases a sum corresponding to a ketubah. Rabbi Yossi says he may go on decreasing it continually. Perhaps an inheritance will fall to her from somewhere else, and he will collect therefrom. Likewise, if one rebels against his wife, they increase her ksuba for 3 dinners a week. Rabbi Yehuda says 3 tropaks. Right. If one supports his wife through a third party, he may not give her less than 2 kavan of wheat or 4 kavan of barley. Said Rabbi Yossi, no one provided her with barley except Reb Yisrael, who was near Edom. He must give her a kav of beans, half a log of oil, and a kav of dry figs or a manna of pressed figs. If he has none, he must provide her in their seed with produce of another kind. He must give her a bed, a mattress, and a mat. He must give her a veil for her head, a girdle for her loins, shoes from festival to festival, and clothes worth 50 zuz from year to year. She may not be given new ones in the summer or warm ones in the winter, but must be given clothing worth 50 zuz in the winter, and she clothes herself with them when they are worn out in the summer, and the worn out clothing is hers. Hey.
Hey.
All right.
Ivamas.
Okay. Okay, Yud base base. And she prolonged Kalisa with a sandal, and it was not his, or with a wooden sandal, and he left a left shoe placed on his right foot. Her Kalisa is valid. If she performed Kalisa with a sandal which was too large for him, but in which he could still walk, or with a sandal that was too small for him, but which covered most of his foot, the Kalisa is valid. If she preferred Kalisa at night, her Kalisa is valid, but Reb Eliezer invalidates it. On the left foot, her Kalisa is not valid, but Reb Eliezer validates it. If she removed the shoe and spat but did not recite it, her chalitza is nevertheless valid. If she recited and spat but did not remove the shoe, her chalitza is not valid. She removed the shoe and recited but did not spit. Reb Eliezer says the chalitza is not valid, but Reb Akiva says the chalitza is valid. Said Reb Eliezer, so should be done. Whatever is in action is indispensable. Reb Akiva replied, "Is that a proof? So should be done to the man. Whatever is in action involving the man is indispensable." If Kalitza was performed on a deaf mute, or a woman who was a deaf mute performed Kalitza, or if a widow performed Kalitza on a minor, her Kalitza is not valid. If the minor girl performed Kalitza, she must perform Kalitza when she reaches adulthood, and if she did not perform Kalitza again, her first Kalitza is not valid. If she performed Kalitza before two judges or
That's
before
enough.
three,
That's done. Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
okay.
that's it.
Okay. Pizza. Okay, pizza. Olive love. Beit Shammai says we will not deliver challah until the Kohen gives to the Kohen on Yom Tov, whether they were separated yesterday or they were separated today. But Beit Hillel permits it. Beit Shammai said to them, "This is an analogy. Challah and gifts are grants to the Kohen, and Truma is a grant to the Kohen. Just as we may not bring the Truma to the Kohen on Yom Tov, so we may not bring gifts." Beit Hillel answered them, "No, it is not analogous, because if you say so regarding Truma, which one may not separate on Yom Tov, you may say the same thing regarding gifts, which one may separate on Yom Tov." Beit Shammai says spices may be crushed on Yontav with a wooden pestle, but salt should be crushed with a flask or with a wooden mixing spoon. But Basil says spices may be crushed in the usual manner with a stone pestle, but salt should be crushed with a wooden. One who separates pulse on Yom Tov, Beit Shammai says he must separate the edible parts and eat. But Basil says he may separate in his usual manner into his lap, into a basket, or into a large plate, but not on a board, nor a fine sieve, nor with a coarse sieve. Reb Gimel says he may also rinse the pulse and skim the chaff.
Okay.
Okay. We are in Trumos. Trumos. Yud Aleph Dalet. The stalks of figs, dried figs, klisim, and carobs of truma are forbidden to non-priests. Sorry, I think I read the wrong. Did I read the right thing? Yeah.
Sorry,
Um,
we're in Yud Aleph Dalet,
Right, that's it.
yeah.
All right, you love hay. Kernels of truma, so long as they keep them, they are forbidden. But if you threw them away, they are permitted. So too, bones of body of holy food, so as long as he keeps them, are forbidden. But if he threw them away, they are permitted. Coarse bran is permitted. Fine bran of new is forbidden, but old is permitted. And he may treat truma as he treats chulin. If one sifts 1 or 2 cobs of fine flour from a saw, he may not throw away. The rest must be put into a hidden place. Um, if one cleaned out truma wheat from a storeroom, he is not enjoined to sit down and collect them one by one, but he sweeps in his usual manner and puts chulin into it.
Okay, done.
And holios. Okay. Yud Gimel Gimel. A hole in the door should be measured with the size of a fist. These are the words of Rabbi Kiva. Reb Tarfon says the hole is measured with a separate handbreadth. If the carpenter left a space at the bottom of the top or the top, and he did not complete the door, or the wind opened the door, the hole is measured with the size of a fist. There is no minimum size for a hole that is made for a stick, a sword, or a lamp. According to Beit Shammai, Beit Hillel says a square handbreadth. If a hole was made to be a peephole to speak with his friend or for other uses, the minimum size is a square handbreadth. The following items reduce the opening to less than a handbreadth. Less than an olive-sized piece of flesh reduces the opening of the source of tumor to a quarter of a cob of bone. A piece of bone smaller than a barleycorn reduces the opening of the source of tumor. If it is an olive-sized piece of coarse flesh, less than an olive-sized piece of coarse flesh, less than an olive-sized piece of carcass, less than a lentil-sized piece of sherrits, less than an egg-sized piece of food, grain covering the window, 6-spider web, the carcass of a kosher species of a bird that was not designated for food, the carcass of a non-kosher species of bird that was designated for food but was not rendered capable of contracting tumor, or was rendered capable of contracting tumor but it was not designated for food. The following items do not reduce the opening to less than a handbreadth.
You know,
Bone is
that's enough.
one. Okay,
Yeah.
keep moving along here.
Yeah.
And vote is order. Okay, Gimel Hay. The Gentiles worship mountains and hills, they are permitted, but what is upon them is prohibited. If it says you shall not covet gold and silver that is upon them and take it. Rabbi Agili says that guards upon the mountains, but they're not the mountains are their guards. The guards upon the hills, but not the hills are not their guards. Then why is not share prohibited? Because it has been affected by human involvement, and anything which has been affected by human involvement becomes prohibited. Rabbi Kiva says, I will expound and liberate before you. Every place that you find a high mountain or raised hill or a green tree, know that an idolatrous object is there. If one house is joined an idolatrous shrine and it collapsed, he is forbidden to rebuild it. How shall we do it? He withdraws 4 cubits into his own property and builds. If it belonged to both him and the idolatrous shrine, it is judged to be half and half. Its stones, timber, and mortar contaminate with tumah, as does the sherets. As it says, you shall utterly detest it. Rabbi Akiva says he does the menstruate as it says, you shall scatter them far as the menstruate. Get out, you shall say to it, just as the menstruate contaminates with tumah being carried, so too an idolatrous object contaminates with tumah by being carried. There are 3 categories of idolatrous buildings. A building which was constructed from the very beginning for idolatrous worship is prohibited. If you whitewash it and decorated for idolatrous worship and made new reservations, one moves what is renovated. If he brought an idol into it and he took it out, it is permitted. There are 3 categories of idolatrous stones. A stone which is used from the very beginning for a pedestal is prohibited. If you whitewash it and decorate it for idolatrous worship, or made reservations or removed what was is renovated, if he mounted an idol upon it and removed it, it is permitted. There are 3 categories of asheros. A tree which is planted from the beginning for the purpose of idolatrous worship is prohibited. If he lopped or trimmed it for the purpose of idolatrous worship and it sprouted, one moves whatever sprouted. If he set an idol underneath it and nullified it, it is permitted. Which is a Shera? Anyone beneath which there is an idol. Remember, Shimon says anyone that they worship, and it happens to sit under running a tree which they worship, they found beneath it a mound. Remember, Shimon says to them, inspect this mound. They inspected it and found an image in it. He said to them, since they worship the image, we will permit the tree to them. Okay.
Okay, and we're done.
All right, great.
Okay.
Have a good day.
Wonderful
Enjoy.
day.
See you tomorrow. Thank you. Be
Bye.
well.